Okay, we'll get started now. And I apologize for those of you who may be joining late. This is being recorded though, but I do have the controls on participants entering and exiting, so it may be a bit of a delay as we move forward and I'm presenting. But greetings everyone and welcome to today's webinar on the California Truth and Healing Council, Draft Charter and Nominations Process and Next Steps. My name is Christina Snyder, and I'm a member of the Dry Creek Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians and the Tribal Advisor to Governor Gavin Newsom. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the land I'm joining you from today is the original homelands of the Patwin peoples. I'm now going to walk through some of the logistics for today's webinar. First, we're recording today's presentation. A recording will be made available probably by tomorrow on the resources page for the California Truth and Healing Council website, which is at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC/resources. And it will also be made available on the Tribal Advisor Facebook page. You've all been muted and your cameras have been disabled. I ask that you remain muted until we get to the comments and questions portion of today's webinar. Once we get to the comments and questions portion of today's webinar, you can ask questions by using the raise hand function or by entering your question into the chat box. If you're using the Zoom app, you should be able to raise your hand using the app controls, but you can also use Alt-Y in Windows and Option-Y on Mac to raise or lower your hand. If you have difficulty, you can also directly message me through the chat feature that you have a question and I will call on you. Once you've called in, we'll first go through raised hands for questions, but we'll then open the webinar to any dial-in questions. At that point, you can unmute your line using *6. Again, thank you for joining us, and I'll jump right into today's presentation. The goal of this presentation is to give California Native Americans, tribes, and the general public a better understanding of the California Truth and Healing Council and how all Californians can get involved. For the council to be successful and effective in its work, the entire community needs to come together to address deep historical wounds and move forward together through a collective supportive healing process. What is the California Truth and Healing Council? The California Truth and Healing Council is a council created by Governor Gavin Newsom via executive order, made up of representatives from California Native American tribes, but can also include relevant state and local agencies and other relevant non-governmental stakeholders. The council is led and convened by the Governor's Tribal Advisor and is limited term, disbanding upon issuance of its final report on January 1st, 2025. What does the council do? Pursuant to the governor's executive order, the council is charged with bearing witness to, recording, examining existing documentation of, and receiving California Native American narratives regarding the historical relationship between the state of California and California Native Americans in order to clarify the historical record of such relationship in the spirit of truth and healing. The council is also required to report annually and submit a final written report of findings to the Office of the Tribal Advisor by January 1st, 2025. The final report aims to reflect a holistic understanding of the historical relationship between California Native Americans and the state and will be modeled on similar reconciliation and healing documents, examining relations between national and subnational governments and indigenous populations using an international human rights framework. Will the council examine reparations? Yes. Pursuant to the draft charter, the council may examine and make recommendations aimed at reparation and restoration and consider how to prevent similar depredations and/or policies in the future. Before any of you get worried, the governor himself has signed off on this, so we're not sneaking anything in there, and this is something that he fully endorses and wants the council to examine. The draft charter is available for further examination at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC/resources. The structure. The council is organized under a charter and is made up of voting members and non-voting members. There are 12 voting members, all of which must be representatives of California Native American tribes. The charter is currently in draft form and will become final upon signature of the voting members of the council. Voting members. Of the 12 voting members, 3 members each must be from southern, central, and northern and eastern geographical areas of the state. And for each of these areas, one of the 3 appointed voting members needs to be from a non-federally recognized California Native American tribe on the list maintained by the Native American Heritage Commission. Membership as a voting member is available to duly elected officials or appointed designees of California Native American tribes on the list maintained by the Native American Heritage Commission. Voting members of the council will be compensated with a per diem and will also have their reasonable travel expenses covered for quarterly meetings. This is to acknowledge their unique experiences, knowledges, and backgrounds. There are also non-voting members of the council, which can include but would not be limited to representatives from state and local agencies, academics, and community leaders. There's currently no cap on the number of non-voting members, but under the charter, the voting members will vote to admit folks to the council. And so that will be discussed, and the process and parameters around non-voting member engagement will be discussed at its first meeting in December. Public participation. The council welcomes and encourages all available methods for public participation. Participants can attend and observe all meetings of the council with the exception of any closed session proceedings, submit written statements to the council, make oral statements and testimony to the council, participate in interactive dialogues, panel discussions, and informal meetings, and organize and host affiliate events on issues relevant to the work of the council. In addition, the council may convene subcommittees to look at discrete areas of work, and which are generally open to all participants. Structure. So this is basically how it looks. The voting members are tribal elected officials or duly authorized representatives. They'll choose how to admit non-voting members and what that makeup will look like, whether it's members that are there for their expertise in formulating human rights type councils, or whether it's educators who could benefit from experiencing this and thinking about it through a lens of incorporating it into a curriculum. But it can really be anybody that the voting members think would be a good fit. Public participation in affiliated events are open to all California Native Americans, all members of the public. Anybody who would like to be engaged in this process can publicly participate, and the meetings themselves are all open to the public. So, you know, there's kind of endless possibilities about what the public can do, and NGOs and academics can also host affiliate events similar to the structures that are enabled through international frameworks. So for example, the Human Rights Council, if they're hosting a symposium or an event, you can submit affiliate events to the UN that they will help either publicize without endorsing or possibly endorse, so that all of this can be done under an umbrella without everybody doing the same thing, but also leveraging all of the strengths of the community and providing for all of those tools to participants of this framework. Why this structure? The structure was adopted based on tribal consultation responses and extensive review of similar international mechanisms. Just as a caveat, there are very few international mechanisms that look at actual historical depredations in terms of indigenous populations. And so this was modeled off of some of those with a California lens, given the unique circumstances in California. Because the Truth and Healing Council will be the first entity of its kind in the United States tasked with such an expansive and broad-based undertaking, it is critical that California tribal governments and the broader California Native American population drive the work of the Council, while offering broad access and opportunities to support and amplify the work to all Californians. Under the charter, but also as envisioned in the body of work, tribal consultation is a key element. So it is my task to consult with all of the tribes that are on the Native American Heritage Commission list, and that needs to be done. This is not in writing, but I've put it as a task so that there's enough time to incorporate this into the final document. If you are a California Native American tribe, I will arrange for a time to consult with you before January 1st, 2024, to record, gather existing documentation of, and receive narratives regarding the historical relationship between the state of California and California Native Americans. You can request consultation proactively at tribalaffairs.ca.gov/CTHC/consultation. And while I'll endeavor to meet all of the tribes in the location of your preference and at the time of your preference, right now everything is via Zoom or conference call, whatever's most comfortable with, for the tribe, until conditions alleviate. So if conditions alleviate sooner, this will be, I am happy to come and come to your community or happy to host you here. But also in the interim, we'll take consultation meetings as requested by tribes via Zoom. California Native Americans. The Council welcomes and encourages the participation of all California Native Americans regardless of enrollment status. The historical depredations under examination of the Council are part of the collective experience of peoples of California Native American descent, and their impacts are not limited to citizenship status. California Native Americans can submit documentation, testimonials, or information to my email that's listed there, and can reach out to that email to set up a meeting with the Office of the Tribal Advisor. California Native Americans can also fully participate in and submit documentation, testimonials, and/or information during the quarterly meetings of the Council. Academics. Researchers, scholars, and educators are encouraged to participate in the work of the Council, whether as non-voting members or in a non-member supportive capacity. They may also submit research, documentation, testimonials, or information to my email so that it's incorporated into the work and the records of the Council. And I can also set up a meeting with my office. You can also reach out to me if you'd like to be placed on an agenda. That's a little bit preliminary right now because this work is going to be driven by the Council itself. And so in its initial meeting, we'll be thinking about how to examine these areas, so we'll have a better idea of the roadmap for examination, and we'll be a bit more responsive to and have a bit more clarity on where we could use some support and some help given the issue area, geographic location, or whatever is under examination as directed by the Council. Academics can also fully participate in and submit documentation, testimonials, and information during the quarterly meetings of the Council or serve on subcommittees of the Council. NGOs. The Council encourages involvement of NGOs that could be helpful in providing support services, researching, or amplifying the work of the Council. NGOs can host affiliate events, which may be publicized by the Council in conjunction with quarterly meetings of the Council. They can submit documentation, testimonials, or information to my email, and can also set up a meeting with my office to input that information. You can also participate in and submit documentation and testimonials during the quarterly meetings of the Council. Partnerships. The Council welcomes partnerships from organizations, agencies, and individuals who can provide services related to the mission of the Council, including but not limited to research and scholarship, documentary filmmaking, emotional community and behavioral support, and media and communications. That is not an exclusive list, so if you have ideas about how you can support or amplify or partner with the Council, we are open to all of those options and think that this in order to be successful, has to be a community lift. And so from our end on the state side, we're here to set the table, but want to bring as many folks along as can be helpful to making this actually something that works for California Native American communities and for the community as a whole to heal and move forward in the spirit of truth and healing. Council meetings. The council will meet on a quarterly basis over 2 days in March, June, September, and December. The council is charged with performing its work with transparency, inclusion, and respect for all experiences, viewpoints, and backgrounds. The council encourages all available methods for public participation. And just to clarify, the source material for all of this is the charter draft itself. So I encourage you to take a look at that charter draft because it guides the work of the council and will be finalized in December, and is based on the extensive input from tribal communities and the public as well. To provide and preserve public access to the primary materials for the final report and appendices, the council will live stream, record, and transcribe meetings, and it will audio record and transcribe consultations. All materials will be available on the website of the Governor's Tribal Advisor. So just to be clear, this whole process is incredibly transparent, and I understand that there are some issues of confidentiality in terms of whether these would impact Native cultural resources, cultural knowledges. So just to be very clear on the front end, a lot of this is going to be publicly available also because for the dual purposes of being transparent and useful for the public and California Native Americans in general, but also to ensure that there's active participation and clarity about what's going on in the council. So, and for the record, for other initiatives and partnerships that may find it useful, the work of the council and what comes up. So we can have this conversation on a case-by-case basis as consultations move forward, but just want to be clear about that. Meetings will take place over 2 days and will start with 4 hours each day with 1 hour break for lunch. This structure right now is really based on the constraints of Zoom meetings and the attention span and patience of folks within that constrained setting. And so as we move forward, if it feels like that's not enough time or that it's something that should be, at least during COVID times, re-examined because that's not enough time to get through everything or to meet, we can have that conversation once the council is formed. But this is just the basic outline, subject to change as we kind of are flexible with some of our COVID constraints. So day one of quarterly meetings of the council will be a facilitated talking circle using the expertise of a culturally appropriate wellness practitioner who will also be able to connect participants with tools to work through historical trauma and the work of the council. Day two of the quarterly meetings will be dedicated to a hearing style presentation of historical findings, evidence, outcomes, and experiences from day one, and resources as directed by the council. Over the course of each quarterly meeting, a culturally appropriate wellness practitioner will provide participants with tools to process and heal from ongoing and historical trauma. If you are interested in providing culturally appropriate wellness services during quarterly meetings of the council, please contact my office at the email listed here. Also, due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, council meetings will take place virtually and live streamed until conditions allow for in-person participation. Once the conditions alleviate, the council will rotate its meeting locations in the 4 geographical areas throughout the state. This is to ensure that there is a local focus and local access in places that may not be able to leverage technology as well as we would hope or as should be available in 2020. But that's just, we'll have to be flexible as we move forward, given that COVID is really putting a hamper on that kind of engagement. But again, the council can think about how best to accomplish this and can also adjust as we move forward. So what's next? The Office of the Tribal Advisor is accepting nominations for voting members of the Council until November 1st, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Time. Voting members of the Council will be selected and announced in November. And then the first meeting of the Council will take place December 3rd to 4th, that's a Thursday and a Friday, via Zoom and live stream. And again, that will be 10 to 3 both days with an hour break for lunch. That hour break, we are offering as possibly a time for affiliate brown bags. So if you're interested in doing and hosting an affiliated brown bag, we are happy to plug you into the events that are going on around this first meeting. Again, meetings will be recorded. They will also be streamed similar to other state body meetings, and all meetings will be transcribed for the record and for the final report. Sorry, I'm admitting some people from the waiting room, so I apologize if this is a bit disjointed. So what else is going on? Day one on Thursdays, December 3rd, will be a facilitated discussion of issues of the Council or issues the Council should examine and an open dialogue for participants. So really this is I will give credit where credit's due. This structure is very heavily borrowed from the Maine Wabanaki Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which has also some documentary footage that talks about this structure that's also kind of in conjunction with a lot of how how the work of this and how public participation is going to be facilitated is based on. And it is our intention to, in the first meeting, bring in folks from that commission so that they can share lessons learned and where there are opportunities to do more and do better, and then where there are opportunities to leverage some of their existing knowledge. So that is a TBD item, and I probably shouldn't have shared it yet, but that's kind of what we're thinking of in agenda development in advance of that meeting. Day two, December 4th, will focus on introduction of voting members, finalization of the charter, review of the initial draft report and consultation report, presentations on similar mechanisms, and discussion of non-voting members. Both days, again, will take place from 10 a.m. to 3 with an hour break for lunch, and materials and participation information will be uploaded to the meeting portion of the CTHC website. So that's the presentation. I know we're now at the comments and questions portion of today's call. So I'm going to allow folks to raise their hands and I'll take questions through